All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dolphins of all ages, I am Beast Mike, your front row passenger of the To-A train, and you've now arrived in my train of thought. It's time to get back into the mock draft season. I know I've been away a little bit and a little under the weather currently. You can probably tell in my voice. I hope that doesn't get in the way of all this. But obviously there are two big flies in the ointment that have to be addressed right off rip. First, the Calais Campbell situation, where he decided to go to the Cardinals and go back to where he had originally played. It sucks that he decided to leave because he was a very stable leader and the leader of the defense. And he still played really, really well. I think the argument can be made. It's him or Zach Sealer, who are probably the two best players on Miami's defense. And now he goes back to Arizona, one-year deal there. So now we have a gaping hole at the D-tackle spot. And then, of course, the retirement of Campbell Armstead last weekend, where it sucks because when he's healthy, he's a really good left tackle, and he showed himself to be. That's the problem, though. When he's healthy, he just hasn't been. He just wasn't. In his time in New Orleans or his time in Miami, he just wasn't healthy. And it really sucks because I think with full health or close to full health, he's probably a Hall of Famer because of how great he was in both places. And his leadership, I think, will be very well missed. For the 3 years that he was in Miami, I feel like he was a great leader, and he was obviously a great player and stabilizer of the offensive line when he was able to play on it. So good luck in retirement to Ron Armstead. Good luck in Arizona, Calais. But now we're going to get to the mock drafts. You know the drill. If you watched the previous video I did on this, it is one mock draft where I don't do trades, one mock draft where I do. Let's get to business. First, a mock draft where I didn't do trades. And this is a run to the board and go get him type of situation at 13. Will Johnson, I think, is the best pure corner and maybe probably better than Travis Hunter even in this draft. And he is going to be, I think, special in the NFL. Great boundary corner. We need one of those. I think the interior situation would be so much better with Will Johnson on the opposite side of Jalen Ramsey. And he's a, I think, fitting person to pass the torch to from Ramsey when it's Ramsey's time to go either someplace else or retire or whatever. That was just a way too easy run to the board, go get him. Kenneth Grant is a guy who I highly would have considered of taking at 13 if he were there. And the fact that I could get him at 48 and not have to do anything feels like stealing. So I make Stephen Ross a little happy in this situation, and get two other Michigan men to help out the defense. Kenneth Grant becomes a really good connect for Zach Sealer. I was obviously thinking of Zach Sealer with the next pick and getting Joshua Farmer. This is, I think, a very productive defensive tackle draft. I think there's a lot of good D-tackles to snatch up in the first 4 rounds here. And with Farmer, I feel like I'm getting another high-energy type of dude like Grant is, and now you complete the defensive line. You have 2 rookies and you have Sealer. We saw what the Eagles could do with 2 young studs from Georgia handling business on the defensive line, and now I'm giving Sealer 2 rookie studs who I think could dominate and put in work with Sealer and keep the Dolphin defensive line afloat. But obviously, the other major hole is at left guard. I need to fix that ASAP. So I went with Jackson Slater. Slater's versatility and his experience and his leadership, I think, are going to be very helpful in this situation. Immediately slot him at the left guard spot. And Patrick Paul, at your time, obviously, as the left tackle of the future. That's what he was drafted to be. Did I draft other left tackles? You'll find out in a moment. This, I think, is a pretty good safety draft in rounds 1 through 4 and maybe even 5, depending on how it falls. Jalen Reed, I think, played really good ball last year at Penn State. And as a Penn Stater, I can say I've watched a lot of his games in the last year, and he really stepped up when Kevin Winston Jr. went down to injury. And Reed made some monster plays. The NO against USC was huge on their last regulation drive. The pick 6 against Wisconsin changed that game completely. Reed made big plays everywhere. He, I think, is a very productive player against the run and against the pass. Jalen Reed, I think, will be a really good third safety, and especially considering the other 2 free agent signings at that position were 1-year deals. Next up, give me another linebacker, complete the linebacker room, even though I do love the keeping of Dotson, and the linebacker room as a whole, I think, is very productive with him, and of course with Jordan Brooks, who played really well. Danny Studsman becomes effectively the third or fourth linebacker here, because obviously Channing Tindall just hasn't worked. And I think he and KJ Britt can fight for the third linebacker spot here, or if he becomes the fourth, all right, that's fine too. I think Studsman, would be a pretty solid situation there. Trey Wedding from Indiana. Indiana proved themselves to be a pretty good team last year. A lot of leadership, a lot of productivity from that offense, especially Wedding's ability to play in the guard spots and the tackle spots. I think something I had to have here. I would obviously keep him at one of the tackles. He probably becomes LT2, and we move forward there. Jalen Connors, and get another tight end to round out that room with Jonnu Smith, obviously, and Pharaoh Brown. Maybe he fights Julian Hill for the third tight end spot, and hopefully he can block efficiently in the NFL on that stage as opposed to the collegiate one. Curtis Rourke just decided to take a flyer on a late round QB. I've always said I think Miami should draft a quarterback in this draft. I think of the other positions of need, I think are a little too valuable to go in the first 4 rounds. But if the right QB fell to pick 150, for example, or 155, it may be worth taking a flyer on. But for Rourke, just like Wedding, I think he played pretty well last year in Indiana and helping the Hoosiers get to the college football playoff. And then finally, Donovan Edwards from Michigan, very versatile player. Saw him really rip up the college football landscape, especially on the 23 national championship team that Michigan had. But Donovan Edwards was a very good player at Michigan, especially in the first 3 years of his time there. So that's my natural no trades draft. How different would the actual trades draft be? But before I do that, I'm going to go into the trades. Now, I didn't trade 13, but I did trade 48 to the Lions and ended up dropping a few picks, 60 and 102. So I ended up getting an extra third, or Capenzi third. I feel good about that, getting more swings at the batting cages, if you will. Then said 102, I did not keep, obviously. I flipped to the Chargers, losing the round 7 to 53, but I gained a bunch of stuff, as you can see from LAC with this trade, getting 125, 158, 181. I didn't have to make too many trades because the first couple of rounds really worked out in my favor. You'll see why in a sec. Let's get to business with how this worked. Just like the previous draft, the fact that Will Johnson fell to me, give me that. He's one of those guys that is run to the board and get at 13 if he's there at 13. You go acquire him. He becomes CB2. I already explained this. Then I had to go with the D tackle. Again, Zach Sealer needs a friend who could cause destruction and chaos. Darius Alexander, I think, could cause that destruction and chaos. Like I said, I think this is a very good D tackle draft in the first 4 rounds. Go get one. Maybe, I would argue, go get 2. Go get a clog in the middle, and then go get another guy who can cause chaos and mayhem and can get to the backfield like Sealer can. Elijah Arreo, another tight end. Maybe the tight end of the future in the event that Jonnu goes, or maybe he takes the torch immediately from Jonnu and leaps over Pharaoh Brown. But again, I think you need a tight end of the future in the event that Jonnu Smith is gone after this year. And Deion Walker, give me that clog in the middle of the defense. I really, in a 3-4 defense, I need a clog. I need somebody in the middle that can cause havoc in the run lanes and allow the other guys to eat and make things happen. So give me a clog. Deion Walker is a big, big dude. I think he can be said clog. Now I got to go to the offensive side of the ball. Get me another guard. Get me some guards. Jackson Slater, versatile player from Sacramento State, who proved himself at a smaller school, can still handle business. I think he slots in left guard right away. Now, with getting Powell from Virginia Tech, you can't have too many edge rushers. I think that's one thing I kind of neglected to do with the non-trade draft. I decided to do it in this one, get me another edge rusher, a 4th guy or 5th guy if Mo Kamara can continue to develop, and just have another edge rusher to go after the QB. Just makes too much sense. I already mentioned Wedding, and then we'll jump to Dylan Gabriel. Like I said, if there's a QB I think worth taking at 150 or 155, I'd do it. I think Gabriel's one of those guys to take. So Gabriel has proven himself to be a very good QB, whether at Oklahoma or especially at Oregon, when it was a dominant offense. And they were the number one team in the country for pretty much the entire regular season. And then Ohio State promptly got their lick back. But anyway, Gabriel, good quarterback, very efficient QB. I can, and obviously he can make some plays out the pocket. I will take that. Sebastian Castro, Iowa's always had some good defenses. They know what they're doing with the safety position. So in theory, you have Castro learn from Melifonwu and Ashton Davis, and he becomes the third safety. Maybe play some center field and get on the field and handle business in the defense, because Weaver likes versatility. Jordan Phillips, again, I want to clog in the middle of the defense, and I decided, you know what? Let's just fill out the entire defensive tackle room. Phillips just fell to the draft. It just kept falling. It kept falling. It kept falling in this mock. So finally at 181, I was like, all right, you know what? Just take him. And I think we can run with those three tackles and Sealer and just go to work and eat when it comes to this D-line. And Benito Jones, who's a decent role player. When it comes to the center spot, I just feel a little bit more comfortable with a natural center behind Aaron Brewer. And Jacob Gideon, I think, could fulfill said spot if he were to make a team with the good leadership and the versatility, who could also play some guard. So I can rock with that. And then give me a bulldozer at the very end of this draft with Phil Maffa from Clemson. You need those short yardage backs. I like the Alexander Matheson signing for that reason, who is usually money in the bank when it comes to short yardage. Give me Maffa, who could be even more of a bulldozer and a freight train to help the cause for Jalen Wright and obviously Devon Achane. So you have it. These are my mocks for this week. They will be coming, I would say, next Tuesday or Wednesday. And then night one of the draft, I will do a mock shortly before that draft begins. Power rankings, tomorrow or Thursday, one of those 2 days, they will drop. What happens with Denver now that Mike Malone's out? Where do the Nuggets fall? They have struggled a little bit as of late. Where does Denver fall in the West pecking order? There's a lot to figure out. But one thing is easy. Utah, you're going to be the first stop of my next train of thought.